Here we go. Welcome back to Conflict of Leadership Coffee Table Edition. Am I going to have to constantly be, or are you done over there? Okay.
I think so.
Last week you were playing with the cats. This week you're texting.
It was important.
More important than this? You know what? While we're waiting, just roll to the intro.
Bam.
So do you know I actually got the copyright claim got resolved on that, so we can keep it. I don't have to remake it again. Oh, I'm so excited! It took
it
took like 4 days. Like YouTube says that the disputes can stay open as long as 30 days. Typically I've had only like a few hours, like up to 12 hours, and it's done. But this was a while. So, but no, we're happy. Yeah. So. Welcome, as I said, coffee table edition of Conflict of Leadership. I am your coordinator shenanigans, Tim Copeland, and this is your silly goose,
Jeremiah.
And we have been in the middle of a series I feel like is slowly getting more and more triggering as we go. Like, I've been like thinking about it as we've been doing it, and I can see some people getting a little triggered over, especially last week's episode.
You know, and like when you called and said we have our first comment, like our organic comment, so and that was exciting.
Pull that up real quick here because that's really special. Professionals would have had this already pulled up and looked at and whatnot, but we are beyond professionals. So
for precision,
experts. But no, this is from JP Optu SZ. I don't know if that's supposed to be JT-Lopez or but thank you, JT, for your comment there. We really appreciate it. If you're the first one who is not quote unquote one of our friends, family, mom, goldfish, or whatever. So but actually let's go ahead and just kind of react to that real quick. That his comment was, one thing I was taught was a long time ago: event plus reaction equals outcome. And when you make a mistake, you need to own it. It may suck, but it'll only get worse for you over the long run if you cover it up. And kind of react to that for a sec, because when you and I talked about that, you said that was square on the head of like everything.
Yeah. And brings up because like when I first started, the older officers, they're yelling at the younger guys and screaming at them like, there's your reaction, and now the younger guys are like, oh crap, I'm screwing up, and they may take it personally. They may get offended. You don't know how they're going to react, and then there you go. And then they get treated like that for who knows how long, and then next new guy, and they're helping that, they're going to do the same thing, and it's just a circle. It's a vicious circle.
No, and I kind of went the in a similar vein, but kind of branched off from that like whatever outcome that you expect or you want to have. So to what you're saying, you got fire officer or senior firefighter who is trying to mentor someone. What is the end result you want? And then that should be how you gauge your reaction. So if you want somebody, say running lights and sirens, you want them to be more controlled, and you don't want them flying through without due regard to stop signs and whatnot. Screaming and yelling at them is probably not going to net you that outcome that you want.
No.
It's probably going to actually make things
way worse. It's going to make the situation more stressful. And driving under stressful conditions like that, it's not good.
Well, and at the same time too, and this has been the conversation we've been going through, and we're going to continue today, is on the other side, if you just don't have reaction. So what we're talking about, this new brand of toxic leadership where it's all about family, all about team, and all that, and that's great. Except if in that guise you don't ever address issues or you never correct actions or mistakes, then the outcome is going to be mistakes are only going to get worse because there is no one guiding you back to principle.
Yeah, and you got to have some kind of guide. Someone's got to show them the ropes. Like my full-time job, there I don't see a whole lot of good leadership, and it's sad. The company is very good, but their leadership non-existent, and they rely on us in the field to do that. But as well as I do, you can only do so much. Just like my grandpa always would tell me, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And I see it all the time. And it's like, what is going on? And then they just leave it up to us. And then when we tell them or teach them these things, and then they go back, well, they taught me how to do this, and that. And they're like, why would they do that? Why are you teaching them this? Because this is how it works in the field. You haven't been in the field for X amount of years. It's not like what it was 5 years ago. Things have changed.
Like we were just talking about, this is why it's so hard to get things done around here. You get it now?
Yep.
For everyone who's listening, one of our, we're doing it on site here, and one of our co-workers just pressing her nose pig style against the glass window of the room we're in. So very distracting.
Does it every time. We're doing it here too. Your signature move.
It really is. We'll tell her that. Your signature move is pig. But no, we were talking about this with EMS reporting software, and how it's very rare for somebody who actually works in the field to be the one who creates the software, if they even have any input. It's a board of executives or it's a committee of people who maybe they have an idea, but they don't know exactly. So that's where you end up with volcanic eruption and avalanche, and for New Mexico, or I guess New Mexico could have, once upon a time did have volcanoes, so that's not a good example. Florida. There we go. Florida. Yeah, when was the last time we had an avalanche in Florida? Got plenty of tornadoes and lightning strikes.
Probably 10 million years ago.
Right, but yet because somebody is trying to who doesn't know how those work, trying to make it work for everybody and then make everybody happy. You make absolutely nobody happy, because now in order to sift through to find what you need, whether it's car accidents, fall, gunshot wound, whatever, you also have all these non-relevant or really ambiguous things that you have to work through. So
yeah, like my full-time job, a lot of system we use, it's 911 based, and a lot of times there's nothing for us to choose. So all you can really choose is general weakness and weakness. That's it. Nothing else fits it. Like, it doesn't look, to me, it doesn't look good on a report until you write your narrative and your chief complaint. Like, this is what it is, but I got nothing for it. So I have to choose weakness, because that's the only thing.
Well, and that's the thing, is when we were doing a call the other night, and it was for an abnormal lapse. There's no abnormal lapse, and then there's no way for me to type that in under an other. And I get what the developers of these software is trying to do. They're trying to make sure that you don't just kind of fall back on the same thing or same, weakness, or can't walk, or chest pain, specify.
Yeah.
I get that, but there is this fine line between being over specified and then not having anything that actually fits what you're trying to sell.
Exactly. And it makes it harder on the report writer too. You're trying to put something that's gonna fit whatever the chief complaint is, but nothing there. And like you said, you can't sit there and type it. You can't put other and type in what it is. There's no options for that.
A great example is stroke. So CVA, cerebral vascular accident, it encompasses a huge spread of actual etiologies, right? It can be trauma based, it can be hemorrhagic, it can be occlusion, it can present itself, it can be secondary to trauma, It could be an occlusion stroke that then becomes like there's any number of ways. And I found this the other night too, trying to type this out. Which came first, the stroke or the head injury? Well, the head injury came first, and then technically stroke, but there's no way to specify what like kind of stroke. Again, you put in your narrative.
Came first, the chicken or the egg.
You can put it in the narrative, but at the same time too, it's like if you're gonna be that specified, then you need to put in some of the things like stroke secondary to, it's like the same thing as like when you look at your cardiac arrest tabs, like in ESO, the cardiac arrest tab, it asks you what do you think is the cause of cardiac arrest. And it's got respiratory, it's got neurologic, overdose, and then there's one that says presumed cardiac. Okay, cool. So you do that with stroke. So so talking to the patient and whatnot, and I realize it's very difficult in us in the field to determine that, but I mean, stroke, presumed hemorrhagic, presumed occlusion, or presumed traumatic, because head injuries or heavy trauma, car accidents, that kind of thing can absolutely cause strokes. So,
absolutely, and we got to be those detectives to figure out, which one. Sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes it's not. I had a patient last week, same thing. He had a fall, he's had stroke-like symptoms. What, did you fall and then have the stroke-like symptoms, or did you have the stroke-like symptoms and then fall? We don't know, and neither do they.
But if they come afterwards, so if you got family who says, oh, they were perfectly normal, they fell 3 days ago, and now they're presenting with this, okay, you probably got brain bleed going on. Again, we don't know that for sure, but that starts pushing the direction there. So, but no, I mean, that's it. At the end of the day, it's the idea is that if you know where you want to end up, you can tailor make your responses to events to end up there. And I promise you, if you don't have an idea what you want to accomplish or where you want to be, you're not going to respond appropriately to different events, scenarios, or what have you to get there.
No, and I'm not a big fan of yelling at people. Now, mind you, I've yelled at someone before because they were doing something that's going to get themselves hurt or killed, or someone else hurt and killed. But then I was like, listen, didn't mean to yell at you, but this is why I yelled, just to get your attention. This is why you can't do this or that. Explain it to them, then give them like, try it doing it this way or that way. They both are correct, but you got to find out what works for you. Like my last partner I've had the past month, she's still very new, and I'm trying to explain to her, I'm like, you can't be doing this. Like, stop. Like, there's no need for it. It's absolutely unnecessary. I did yell at her one day. Felt bad, but I said, I'm sorry I yelled, but don't ever swerve into another lane like that again. Either hit the brakes or let the car hit you. I was like, because you swerve over and you hit another car, now it's your fault. You don't want that.
Again, this is where it really comes into what's the outcome. My father-in-law and I had this conversation the other night as I'm taking a new role as a company first sergeant, and he's saying it's like, oh, well, we need to have soldiers again who just say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, whatever, and go. And there is purpose to that. In the fire service, there's purpose. The house is on fire, and I tell you, go pull a hose line. I don't need to explain to you why, how, for how many cookies, whatever. No, just go pull the damn hose line and go to work. Now, that being said, there are times where, and an EMS call would be a good example of this, or maybe an extrication would be a good example of this, So you got somebody inside and they say, hey, we're going to try to take the patient out through the windshield. Why? And it's like, oh, well, the car's on fire. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's get him out. But if the car's not on fire, it's not sinking in mud, it's not submerged in water. Okay, so why are we going to do this very hazardous, most likely to cause further injury and damage to the patient? Why not pull down the roof? And that's the difference between a time to ask questions and time to just follow orders.
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing an emergency move to get them out. We need to do this methodically, safely for us and for the patient too. Slower is faster.
Slow is smooth. It's Yeah.
Close smooth, yeah. God, I can never get that right some days. But yeah, you get what I'm saying.
I understand.
Maybe I'm having a stroke today.
Do you smell the color purple? Do you see the number 14?
I taste the number 14.
That works too.
And hear the number, hear the color purple. God, I'm having a stroke.
I hear the letter A. I can taste the letter B.
Literally.
So, well, you know, that kind of takes us into like, and actually, that's actually a perfect segue. His comment to what we're going to talk about today, because originally I was going to pitch to you, let's wrap up this series of like, you know, what's next. And I think we actually talked about that last week after we were done. So, and I think it's at the end of the episode. So sorry for everyone that we just bait switched on on this. We have to wait at least another episode before we get to the what do we do about it. I want to talk about, where does this new brand of toxic leadership, i.e., we develop such a family atmosphere that we're afraid to offend anyone. We don't want to correct anyone. Everyone works as a team. And if you say that won't work, you're ostracized. Where does that end us up? Because it can take us some very bad places.
Oh, absolutely it can. Like, leadership at my full-time job. Said terrible. Been there for 6 years now. This is the worst I've ever seen it. I made a comment the other day. This group of managers is by far the laziest. The laziest. Like, we had an incident with one of our ambulances yesterday. Something's going on with the brakes. We're not sure exactly what. They get back to the station. Smoking. White smoke pouring out. They're like, oh, it's fine. Just throw some water on it. Not the right response, you know. And then that crew, it put bad taste in their mouth to that crew. Like, there's an issue, major issue, safety issue. And you said just throw some water on it and park it inside of a building. Great leadership right there. It said, okay, don't put it inside. We're going to call a tow truck. That's what should have been done. Instead, throw water on it. It'll be fine. My partner today had to drive that to Brecksville. She texted me today, telling me where she had to pull over. She almost had to call 911 because it was almost on fire. It should have been handled yesterday. That is, to me, that is piss poor leadership. Instead of not dealing with it when it should have been dealt with, it's fine. Brush it under the rug. They'll bring it up tomorrow. I would like, nope, I'm not driving.
Well, what's funny about that, because I remember in my days of running private ambulance, and we talked about this the other day, is that there's there's always a group of people who, if they say something, everyone listens to them, or at least your dispatchers, the bosses. So if the right person comes and says, "Hey, I'm not taking that truck," oh, hey, cool, we'll find you another truck. They'll bend over backwards. But then if that one crew, which, I mean, maybe it's no surprise, I was that crew once upon a time, who the dispatchers didn't like, who, you know, the bosses more or less tolerated. And you said, hey, there's a problem with the truck. Are you really sure there's a problem? Are you really sure? Like, it sounds to me like you're just trying to get out of work. It sounds to me like you're just trying to, you know, pass everything off to the next crew. Are you positive? And more times than not, it would come back like, hey, why are you guys driving this truck? Hey, you guys can't drive this truck. It's 10 degrees outside. You have no heat. Yeah, we know. We were told it'd be okay. And all of a sudden then becomes an issue, because now that brand of leadership that said, oh, you know, we don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers, you know, we might have to take an ALS car and have them run a trip or two now you've created a bigger issue, because now you're down a truck, but you're down a crew, and then another crew now has to pick up double for what that crew is missing.
Exactly. And I told her today, I said, you know, they should have just had it towed yesterday. And then here you are, you drove it, almost caught fire, because she said it was nothing but plumes of white smoke. I was like, yes, because either the caliper is seized or the bearings are seized. I'm like, you're probably dragging a wheel, and it's on one of the back dualies. I was like, they should have towed it. If it would have caught fire, not only are you out of a truck, you're also out of money because of your stupidity.
Yeah, and then here's a question that you have to ask yourself. So it was more important for you to be right than for you to be safe. It was more important for you to keep that on. What would have happened if there was a patient in the back there?
Exactly, because they were toting around patients with that going on yesterday. That is a major lawsuit.
And even so let's just run with not even the worst case scenario where it catches fire, but your brake fully sees up on a state highway that is only one lane north and south, or two lanes north and south there, divided by just a yellow line. I mean, truck traffic and whatnot, your brake sees up. Best case scenario, you're able to stop. Worst case scenario is you skid, you stop, you possibly roll the vehicle, you end up in the ditch, you end up hit, you end up swerving into traffic. Was being cheap, and was this whole idea of like, oh, well, we're gonna show you that you can't get out of work, or you can't boss other people around, was that worth the result?
Not exactly. Now you're putting someone else at risk, not only your own employees, but possibly a patient at that time. And if it's just that one person, like say my partner, it happened on my partner by herself, and something like that happened. Now she was on the clock, and they're making her drive an unsafe vehicle. Now they're gonna be one person down because they put her in danger, her life potentially at risk, just because, like you said, you want to be cheap and didn't want to pay for a tow truck. You got to take the safer option. Like, hey, okay, we know there's a major issue going on here. We need to get it towed. Like, this is not safe to be on the road whatsoever.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like whenever I hear somebody say, we've already said before, when we hear a company say, well, we have family values, or we're team based, we cringe and whatnot. If you really did, you would take, whenever somebody in the family brings up an issue, you would take it seriously until proven otherwise. And that might mean that, hey, you have a crew who sits idle for an hour and a half, 2 hours until, okay, cool. Which is better, for your crew to sit idle and nothing be had, or for you to make the error and almost do. So this happened to me back when I was still an EMT, and it was me and the EMT partner. We were doing a facility step down facility transfer. So we get there, and this patient we find is on the vent, and it's a BiPAP. It's not a vent but it's a BiPAP. And the doc tells us, we can't take them off that because they start desatting, and oh boy, did they! Let me tell you. But so we call our dispatcher, and we tell them, hey, this is a ALS trip. They need BiPAP. They need actual ventilatory support, not just like by bag. Like, they need true ventilatory support. This is not, and so we wait there for like an hour, and not one of our road supervisors, the dispatch supervisor, comes out in his sweatpants and his t-shirt because he's in dispatch that night. He's not planning on going out. Comes out to scold us, apologizes to the hospital for being such a difficult crew to work with, and for trying to get out of a trip. Mind you, this is like the last trip of the day, and we're already held over to begin with, and and he's apologizing that they just thought that they would get out of this so they can go home. He at the nurse's station, it was embarrassing and infuriating. And so they came up to a compromise. I'm still not entirely sure if the doc knew about this when it was all said and done. The compromise was that, we have, with some limitations during some of the, what's it called? Therapy, like physical therapy, they have reduced the patient down to a nasal cannula at 6 liters per minute, trying to wean them off of being on BiPAP. And as soon as this dispatch supervisor heard that, and he's an EMT also, not paramedic, but EMT also, he's like, oh, so they could, in theory, for the 15 minutes it's going to take to go across town, they could be on. Well, I suppose, and long story short, they determined that, yes, this is safe. This is a safe option for 15 minutes. It was not. It was not. As soon as we took them off, they immediately started desatting. They were holding just steady in the mid 90s on their BiPAP. Immediate drop to the low 80s. As soon as we took them off, 6 liters worked in the sense that it kept their sats at like 86%, which I remember. This is years ago, and I still remember this call. And we're like, shit, we're on the clock. Like the time is ticking, and we're two young basics. I mean, my partner had a lot more experience, but like this is way outside the scope of what we should be doing. So we end up on our way down the highway, and it's like, look, it's like, hey, we need to go. Like, this is getting worse. She can't breathe. I'm about a year and a half outside of EMT school. I am panicking, like, fuck, this is going bad. And we ended up, like, so we took them to the step down unit in the next hospital, which is where we're going. And they turned us around and said, go down to ER. Their look is like, what the heck? And we explained what happened, and they're like, no. That doc immediately got on the phone and called to that hospital.
Yeah.
And then called our, yeah.
That puts you guys in a really bad position.
And it's like, and the whole thing, and as I said, my partner and I, we loved working together. We were two peas in the pod. Just, we love working together. But she and I were not popular because she would question when she got things like that. She'd say, hey, this is outside of our scope. And we were labeled as, well, you guys clearly don't care about the team. You guys are supposed to, you guys are always trying to get out of stuff. It's like, it's not my fault that you're sending me from Akron area to Columbus to come back and go all the way up to Cleveland and then back down the mat. Like, that's, and when we say, hey, can we get a break? And the response is, well, you guys have like 2 hours to drive. Why didn't you take a break then? Because you scheduled us a trip that was due an hour and a half ago. And then when we stop, and I brought this up in the last episode, when you stop, you're chastised for stopping. What were you doing? Why'd you stop? Because we needed fuel. We needed to eat. We need you there because this trip was supposed to be an hour and a half ago. That's not my fault. You had me coming from OSU or was it Wexler back up to Massillon. That's not my fault. That is your poor planning, and that is you overpromising what we can do.
Oh, that's our place too. It's like that everywhere. You get these hospitals. You guys are 3 hours late. Hey, I drove an hour and a half to get here, all the way from this area, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yep, just for that one trip." But if you
bring that up, that is now you're just causing a problem. You're just being a naysayer and whatnot. And here's the thing, because we've already touched on it, is there's some people who they get away with murder.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they're the ones like the 8-hour day car who sits there and sleeps the entire day in station. And, meanwhile, the 24-hour ALS crew is getting their dicks kicked in because.
And it should be the other way around.
And it's because, we like the day car people, but we hate them. And this is the low end of where the bad places it goes. It goes much worse places. We don't have to look far. I mean, we kind of already brought up, what was it, Lake, Alabama.
Yeah.
We've there was another one I just saw. Oh yeah, Colorado. That chief and his son who were both had expired paramedic cards, or I think one was EMT, the other one was paramedic. But regardless, expired EMS cards, and yes, still continued.
And they were practicing for years past it.
And it's like this new, like, oh, we're all for a team. How many people tried to bring that up and were threatened, or were, if you don't want to use the word threatened because that might trigger some people, they were just suggested not to rock the boat, or, this chief has been chief for a long time. They've been with this department for so many years. Don't be the one to, completely upset the entirety of the department. And using that position, it gets bad really quick.
Yeah, I mean, just like the Wakeman fire too. Look what happened with that. That was pointing fingers at everyone. It's tragic.
Absolutely. It really is, and it's what I've started to note. Is he back? Oh, okay.
No.
No. What I started to note is that in there is always a group of people who did all the stuff that they shouldn't be doing. Then there's a group of people who thought they're above the law, and then there's a group of people protecting them. And the problem is that whenever you get into that, like, protecting them realm and whatnot, you get some really bad spots really quick.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but like this is where you start getting your harassment allegations, your sexual harassment allegations and whatnot, because we're a family. Well, we just bro out together. We just hang out and whatnot. It's like, no, you're blurring the lines of your
Literally.
roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. It makes you look like
It
paints a bad
really
picture.
does.
Very bad.
It really
picture.
does. Yeah, it's funny because when I look at, and I was thinking this on my way home from work this morning. So if you look at any of these, and then I'll even expand out beyond fire department and EMS, any company across the country, Fortune 500 down, okay, and there is a sexual harassment lawsuit or a workplace harassment or with a hostile work environment lawsuit or whatever, I would be willing to bet, and I have not done any of the research on this, so this is me kind of talking out my ass, but at the same time, I would be willing to bet that 2/3 majority of those companies either outwardly state or they state that in a backwards way that they are a family values or a team values based company and that we value everyone's input equally. And out of those 2/3 that their practices, oh boy, out of those 2/3 that their practices often are focused around like being way too open, like bosses and whatnot, or like the Michael Scott from the office, or the Office. Remember how awkward he always was with everyone? Like, hey, we're going. Oh, you guys going out clubbing? Oh, I love clubbing with my clubbers. You know, let's go. My clubbing clubbers. Like really awkward. It's like that's what you end up with, and then that's the guy who ends up with a harassment or hostile work environments or sexual harassment lawsuit because they have blurred that line.
Yeah. I mean, actually, something like that just happened recently in our area. Actually, my dentist. I was kind of shocked when I read about it. You know, he solicited his own his own employee for sex. I'm like, that's my dentist.
Yeah.
What? I ain't going back there no more. That's a fact. I'm like, that is crossing a line.
Well, and I bet you, and everyone there always laughs. Like, and when new employees are on board, they're like, "Oh, you know, everyone's so fun here. We always have fun. You can go talk to the doc or talk to the boss anytime about anything." And no, it's because you get to be buddy with people way too quick.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I see it all at my full-time job. Those managers have their certain ones that they like, and they're all buddy with them. Get away with everything. But when someone that doesn't get along with them or pushes back, now they have issues with you. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like I'm that person that will push back and like, no, I am not doing this. It's unsafe. I had that issue a couple weeks ago with another ambulance, and they found out, oh yeah, it needs a whole new rear end. I told you.
Well, and it's like, you know, do some employees embellish? Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not saying it by any chance that every single complaint is valid, every single complaint. But at bare minimum, you hear a complaint, you should at least do a cursory second glance of like saying, okay, what is the actual legitimate chances of this? If you have a crew like with private ambulance companies, those ambulances probably do easily 600 miles a day, if not more, depending on where you're going.
Yeah, it was a couple days ago. Put 450 miles on. In one day.
And that's
450, and that's in 4 trips.
So you know when you start doing that math, that means in theory, was it average 4,500 miles or 5,000 miles is whenever you're supposed to be getting an oil change, right? So in theory. And we'll be conservative and say with newer oils, you can get up to 7,500 miles. Okay.
Yeah, some cars are going 15,000, which is insane.
Completely insane. I'm not sure that how to put that with diesels, but I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, but so what's the difference here? So between 5 and 15,000, you get
7,500 is pretty good number.
To get to 7,500 miles at 450 miles a day, that's about 15 to 18 days, roughly. Almost, yeah. About 18 days.
An oil
Yeah.
change a month.
So if you know this and the crew is telling you, hey, the oil's looking bad, and it's about the middle of the month or near the end of the month, you shouldn't dismiss them as saying, oh, you guys are just trying to get out of a trip. No, you should probably like, yeah, no, that number checks out in my head. Yeah, let's get you over and let's get it taken care of.
And that's the thing, like, that's how it should go.
No.
It doesn't. Like, they make us be responsible for checking tread depth on tires. I don't have a tread depth indicator. I'm not a mechanic, like you said. We're supposed to add oil to the truck, which doesn't take a rocket science. But there are some people that don't know how to read a dipstick either.
Well, and the thing is that you can do a lot of damage to engines by overfilling them.
Oh, absolutely. And I keep telling people that stop doing that. Don't know how to do it. Let somebody know that knows how to do it. In between the two lines, you're good. If it's closer to the bottom, please add at least a quart or two. If you don't, if you're uncomfortable, let somebody know. You know, it's like, come on. Like some of our squads, they go easily 8,000 miles over their oil change date. Like, this is not, it's not good.
But on that too, I mean, this is the two questions you have to ask from a leadership standpoint is when somebody's checking something, ask them, what are you checking for? Because it's really easy to pull a dipstick out. Oh, cool. It's a long metal stick thing that got some sort of weird goo on it. Cool. Put it back in versus you're looking for color. You're looking for clarity. You're looking for smell. You're looking for any type of debris, any type, what does it feel like when you put on either on your fingers, which you shouldn't do, or a rag? How's it coming off in a rag? Is it coming off gloopy or is it flowing? Viscosity.
Exactly.
Most people don't know what they're looking at in the first place. So you put this on them, and then it's like, well, then who's now? This is the other side. Like who's at fault then? So none of us are mechanics. None of us claim to be mechanics. So something goes wrong. Who's at fault then?
Right. And a lot of times they'll say, well, did you check the fluids? Like, yeah, there was oil in it. Like, what else do you expect them? That's on us in the field is to train them. Like, that's my last of my worries right there. My worries is getting them acquainted with everything and comfortable that they can go swim on their own in the deep end. That's the last thing I'm going to teach them right there.
Well, it's like a check engine lights. Most of us know that check engine lights overall, and it's I'm going to clarify this in a second, but overall, check engine lights are pretty benign usually. However, the manufacturer said you need a check engine light for a reason. And one thing I have found in my multiple vehicles I've owned is that when the check engine light comes on, it will stay on, quote unquote, indefinitely. But at some point, another problem will rise that check engine light was at least in the
warning you. That's why it's there.
It's like, maybe it is evaporators, maybe it is the fuel cap. Okay, cool.
Yep.
But all of that works together and how the truck is supposed to work.
Exactly.
It's like if you have to add a quart of oil to an engine every month, that's not a feature. That's not the engine's like, oh, it's, get rid of oil for you. No, that's a fault.
Yeah, I mean, and for us, I will say, like, out of our station, we put a lot of miles on these trucks. Most of the time, we're putting close to 15,000 miles a month on our trucks out there. That's a lot of miles a month. In our other station out west towards Pennsylvania, they're doing the same thing between some truck, Youngstown. Oh, east. Yeah, sorry. Oops. I'm stroking out for sure.
Pennsylvania, that just flipped sides.
Sure did. But they're putting almost 20,000 miles a month on their truck. I mean, you really have to keep up the maintenance on that. But they're not.
But that's also cost of doing business. And this is where it bugs me and bothers me, like where we end up, because it kind of ends up in the Norfolk Southern position. Have you read the NTSB report that they've released yet? So I've read the report, and I watched a couple video essays on it. And for those who've forgotten or don't know, so Norfolk Southern has been the train line in the Ohio Valley area over the last probably about 3 or 4 years, they've had some pretty significant derailments. Most popular, most popular. The most significant one has been the East Palestine. What was that?
I mean, you can say popular too. Is that
I don't know if popular is necessarily the appropriate word for that.
Yeah.
But that was what, 2021, 2022?
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
Yeah, so 2022, I'm pretty sure it was. Anyways, but it was the most significant one because if you read the NTSB report and you actually go through and look at all the safety things that the train company should have been taking on themselves, but they parsed off to whatever line they were on. And the example of this was the temperature gauges. So from what I understand, and I'm no expert on this, but from what I understand is that whatever respective line you're running on is kind of like they have temperature gauges every so many miles. We're gonna say 10 just for ease of numbers and whatnot. So every 10 miles they have a temperature gauge that like cursory looks at wheel hub temperatures as they're passing by. And it gives you, but they're not very accurate. They're meant for like a split second, like, okay, is there a problem? Not a problem. They're not very accurate.
Right. Like a check
Exactly.
engine warning light.
And as far back as I think it was Euclid, Ohio, is where they were getting like they were tripping these sensors.
Mhm.
But per the company, you didn't stop the train until the temperature sensors got in excess of a certain degrees above. Again, I have to go back and look at numbers, but I think it was like in excess of like 30 or 50 degrees. Like it was a significant amount of like, okay, this is guaranteed, like where kind of issue. But within that is also the train line's responsibility when they go through certain areas to monitor that themselves. And what was happening was Norfolk Southern was relying on just the local rails monitoring. They were not doing their own monitoring. So they're only getting it every 10 miles or 20 miles, whatever it is, whatever the checkpoints is, it's only getting it there. And where it should have been stopped in Euclid, or at least the Akron area, for check in like, hey, there's a problem here.
Right.
By the time that the rail line temperature sensors actually triggered, like, hey, we have to stop the train, or at least within the company policy, that's when it derailed in East Palestine, because by then those temperature probes, again, they weren't accurate. They're not meant to be. I'm not saying that they need to be more. No, they're meant to give you that quick snapshot to trigger the engineer to say, hey, there's a problem. We should probably inspect further into this. And by the time that happened, and that it was too late, and that's what caused the derailment. And it's the same thing as the check engine light, or the same thing as like, we pass this off because 9 out of 10 times nothing happens. You know, it's like you get in your car in the morning and it was a really bad rainstorm and your brakes squeak a little bit because, a little bit of rust is built up on the rotors. And then by the time you've driven a mile or two, it's worked itself out. 9 out of 10 times, that's not a problem. Except that one time, and when it is, it's catastrophic.
Actually, that's what mine did this morning.
That's why I was thinking about it.
Yeah, it did it last night too, and this morning. But yeah, it takes that. It's that one time. It's gonna cause something to go bad. All it takes is one moment, and that's what I tried to explain to you. It's like I get most of us when we call, it's bull crap. But like they know me, they know I am somewhat mechanically inclined. Again, I'm not a mechanic, but I know when something shouldn't be doing things. Like, just take my word for it. No. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, this, because I was afraid it was serpentine belt in the truck. Because they said it was burning rubber. Okay, maybe it's serpentine belt too. Because they said it was squealing too. Yeah. Oh, okay.
That checks out there. That could be
all right. Yeah, maybe, loose idler pulley tool too. I said, just be careful, because if you lose your serpentine belt, you're losing everything. So slam on the brakes. You're gonna probably have to stand on the brake pedal.
You have no pressure. You have no brake pump.
Yep. And they're like, and he's like, what? I was like, yes, it's actually pretty freaking scary. It's happened to me in a big international ambulance before. Thank goodness I was going in a straight line. But I'm like, and just hold on for the ride.
Well, and that's one of those things too, where it's like you can also shift down and use your lower gears, and
blow the transmission, whatever.
Better do that than, wreck an ambulance.
Kill someone, injure yourselves, transmission costs
I was gonna
10
say,
grand.
last I checked, a new transmission or rebuild of a transmission is a heck of a lot cheaper than a new ambulance right now. Even a new used ambulance.
Yep.
No, it's fascinating to me because the point that this kind of leadership, where it's like we care more about the team, and you bringing up a problem is just you trying to sow dissonance, and it's like it just deserves a cursory look. That's all. That's all it deserves. You have an employee who comes up to you and says, "Hey, I feel like our shift is working harder than all the others." Right. Okay, yeah, we get it. Fire departments, all the crews, whine, moan, gripe. That's it's part and parcel for being the fire service. Yeah. But as whatever, your shift commander, your lieutenant, whatever, should take that cursory look and just kind of like, hey, you don't have to say, okay, cool, we're gonna fix this. Like, just so don't be dismissive, but say, hey, you okay? What? I'm sure that's not what's happening, but you know what? I'm gonna pay attention the next couple of days. I'm gonna watch I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna ask questions, and maybe I'll find an excuse to stop in the stations, throughout the days on different shifts and see if what they're saying is true. Right. And and nothing, and not even in the investigative, like, oh, I'm here to pick out, but just like, is there something to it? And usually you find that there is at least partial truth to it.
Exactly.
And now you can do something. But what ends up happening is in this new brand, and I keep on saying it because that's just the way I branded it, no pun intended. But it's a new brand of like, it's team based. Don't hurt the team. Don't step on anyone's toes. Oh, I'm not going to do that because I might accidentally offend someone else. If it's like, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come to me and said, well, your shift's not doing anything. Oh, well, hey, news to me. If it's that big of a problem, why did they not say anything? Why did they not, And I've actually had to diffuse that with one of our lieutenants a couple weeks ago, where he came in because we got our asses kicked overnight. So we slept in till about 20 till shift changeover. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we had to do station chores. But he comes in like raring, like how much, like, nothing's ever done. You guys never do anything. You guys are always leaving stuff. And finally I go to him like, hey, is this really this big of a problem? Like, you came in, it's like, well, no, it's just always, it just seems like it's always something, Okay, cool. We can fix that now. But I can't fix it if you're going to go to war with me, or I can't fix it if you are too afraid of offending me to come and say, hey, we know it's not, you don't leave the station a wreck, but there's little things, like every once in a while we notice it's not swept, or every once in a while, you guys leave your dishes in the drying rack, or we have a spoon, which some people, here, some people, you leave a spoon and a coffee mug in the sink, and you might as well have not done a dish. And it's like, cool, we can address that. But the moment that you play this game of, I don't want to offend anybody, or your leaders and the chief says, well, you know what? You do things too. Let's not talk about that. No, we can talk about in the context, I do stuff too that drives people nuts. Mm-hmm. But let's address it, because you're not helping anybody with this.
Right. And that's the problem. Nothing's being addressed. Like, I'm the type of person that I'm not afraid to speak my mind, but in a polite way. But I've also said, this is getting bullshit. And I've told my managers, like, you guys are non-existent. When people are here, they see you guys sitting in a dark office. You're on your computer. You're on your phone playing games. That makes you guys look terrible. You say you got all this stuff in the back to do this, that, and people don't realize what you guys do, but they see this. They see you guys sitting here in the dark doing nothing. I'm like, you need to get out there and lead.
Well, and you don't necessarily need to get involved in every single thing. So I'll use the example of this. So I have gone in very short succession here in the Army, from being a squad leader, E5 buck sergeant, to drill sergeant, E6 staff sergeant, to now an E7 sergeant first class, being put into a first sergeant role. And that's happened over about 6 years now. That like went quick. And as a first sergeant, it's like it's weird because I cannot get directly involved, or I should not get directly involved with soldier level things. I'm like, if first sergeants getting involved in there, they're either something's gone very wrong, or my NCOs are not doing what they need to be doing. And to your point, that like we're just letting things go. If I continue doing that, I will not get what I need done as a first sergeant because I'm doing all soldier level stuff that needs to be addressed by junior NCOs. In the same way, too, is that on the other side, if I never get out there and find out what's going on, I'll never know that my NCOs are nowhere to be found. It's because I'm sure for your bosses, they probably sit in their offices, not because they necessarily don't want to do work, but because in their heads, well, we have this chain command tree that I have station leaders and I have like maybe truck leaders or whatever you want to call them, like basically people in management who should be handling this. And so they feel like, okay, I can do this and not worry about it. But if you're not checking on that, or at least coming through and saying, hey, and it's not a once a month, let's have a meeting. It's like, no, stopping in every once in a while, checking the stay of station, checking like what, looking at the call logs. Is stuff actually being done appropriately? And then addressing that with your lower echelons of leadership, like that nothing other gets done. And then everybody looks at you like, well, you don't care. You keep on saying you care, but you don't.
And that's exactly how it is. Like we have station supervisors for every station. These higher up managers, I wish they would come to these stations. They don't. They stay up there in our headquarters. Like I get you guys have some things to do. A lot of times state inspections come out. So yes, they're actually being busy right now for once. But once that's over, they're non-existent. They're hard to find. Like where are they? You go up there because you have to talk to them to get supplies or something. Where is everyone? You literally have to call them. Hey, I'm here. You told me I had to come. Where are you? And like, oh, we're not there. We left. I'm like, well, I need this stuff. I need a new truck. And they're like, just drive it back. It'll be fine. I'm like, no, like we can't do that. Like this is not okay.
It's interesting because the people who they put into those station leader positions or station supervisors, whatever you want to call them. And let's be fair, because this was I'm gonna go political here for just 1 second, and then we'll reel it back in. But this was everyone's argument with Donald Trump whenever he was choosing his cabinet. I think it was Kristi Noem who made a statement, or who's the other one? Tulsi Gabbard. One of those two made the statement because they asked her, well, does it bother you that Donald Trump is picking people that he likes and people he gets along with, and he's not picking his opposition or anyone from his opposition? And whichever one, I'm pretty sure it was Kristi Noem who said this, but she said, no, because why would you choose your enemies to be your advisors to your committees? Like you're going to select people.
They're going to go against anything you say.
You're going to select people who are I don't want to say agree with you, but who are in the same mindset as you. So I don't fault that side. But the side I do fault is whenever we choose leadership that only agrees with you. And we've seen this. I mean, this is something we've been dealing with for a while where I'm at, is that the leaders were not picked out of like, were they the best or were they best qualified? No, were they willing to sit there and sing the song and dance of whatever the fire chief and the assistant chief said? And were they willing to just parrot every single thing and then and squash dissonance, regardless of whether it's right, wrong, or whether they people were qualified? And then this is what causes your guys to get in arguments with their bosses about what they're actually qualified to do, because their boss has no idea that they're hazmat certified. Their boss has no idea that they're tech rescue or anything. And it's like it's a whole new brand. It's this brand of favoritism that all it does is it just protects the egos. It doesn't actually do anything.
It really does. Like our company hired a new ground operations manager. Me being me, I'm gonna dig deep on this person. 6 years EMS experience. That's it. Or was it 4? I can't remember now. But either way, 4 to 6.
Not a ton of time.
No. Volunteer department way
Mhm.
up north. That department ran like 200 calls a year, so barely any
Yeah.
EMS experience really. He was a manager of a Home Depot for a very
Okay.
long time, and I'm like, what qualifications does this manager of Home Depot have that can manage the ground operations of a multi-million-dollar private
Yes.
ambulance company? That put a lot of
Mhm.
question in my mind. Like, who are we hiring? What kind of? I want to see his
Mhm.
qualifications. Like, I don't see anything on his qualifications list. I think that says he
Mhm.
can manage this company like
Well, and
this.
it really does. I mean, more than just to the employees, it does this person a service because at some point you are going to put them in a position where they have
Mhm.
neither the authority, they have neither the knowledge or the experience to navigate, and they are going to do something or say something that is either, at best case, ignorant,
Yeah,
or at worst is insulting or illegal, and it's going to get them in trouble. It's going to get everyone else associated with them in trouble too.
yeah. I mean, there's been multiple times that there's a guy has sent us on an
Hmm.
ALS trip. I'm like, I cannot take this. It has to go
Yeah.
by a paramedic. They're like,
Yeah.
oh no, they said it can go BLS.
Hmm.
No, there is
Hmm.
antibiotics running. Oh, they said that you guys can take them. No, I
Hmm.
cannot. They have to
Yeah.
be discontinued. And this is a person that's coming with
Hmm.
barely any experience. I'm like, I'm trying to tell you, this is not happening. I am not taking this call. And then I get transferred to our supervisor, and they're saying, "Oh, you're refusing this call." Yeah, because they have antibiotics run. They
Yeah.
have to be on, and they're say that, and he's saying that, "Oh, they can take them with you." And I'm like, "No, it has to be discontinued, disconnected from
Yes.
the IV. Cannot do that." Oh, well, that's not what they told us. I'm like, I'm standing here with the nurse. Would you like
Yeah.
to speak to them? And then it's just
Mhm.
crickets on the other line. I'm
And
like,
it's, I
exactly.
remember those days where it's like, well, here, I got the charge nurse who wants to speak to her. And all of a sudden,
Yep.
oh, no. And then it's like, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
we'll call you back. And they call back. And 15 minutes later, oh, hey, you guys are, yeah, we're going to send an ALS truck for that.
Yep.
We didn't know that was what was happening. Yeah. You're a little side eye, like, right.
Yeah, because I'm the type of person that was like, this sounds pretty much like an ALS. I'll screenshot
Yes.
the call,
Hmm.
and like, well, we didn't know.
Hmm.
Well, our dispatch put it in that
Yeah.
antibiotics are running,
Well, it's like,
and then half the time I'll get, well, ask them if they
yeah.
can stop it just so it can go out BLS, and doctor's like, no,
Like,
like they're on
mhm.
antibiotics for a reason.
Well, and again, it comes down to what are the qualifications and what is the, it's really the whole theme of this episode. What is the outcome you want to have? If you want to have a
Yeah,
positive outcome, you're going to put people in position who have experience, who have knowledge, and have the ability to work through those things, and have an actual understanding. If you don't want a positive outcome, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't want a positive outcome, or maybe a better way I should put it is that if to end up getting a not positive outcome, you do the exact opposite of that. You put your friends in positions, you put your, people who agree with you and get along with you in positions, and you just sit back and wait because eventually it will show its head.
it will. I mean, and it also doesn't help when all the managers don't get
No.
along with each other. They're
Mm.
always butting heads. I'm like, you guys are never on the same page. One will tell me one thing. This one will tell me, no, you can't do that. You
Mm-hmm.
got to do it this way. Well, which one am I supposed to
Yeah.
do? Because now I'm getting pulled in two
Mm-hmm.
different directions, and I, well, I don't know what to
Well,
do.
and then you start hitting kind of like it's a less talked about but just as important side of this is the whole idea of like, so let's take out like the existential, like ruins people's lives effects and
Yeah,
whatnot for just your now team, your family, that we didn't want to offend anyone, so we didn't want to pull a manager and say, hey sir, ma'am, you need to stop doing this, or hey, you need to work more like this. We didn't want to offend anyone. We didn't want to offend any employees and tell them, hey, that the manager you really don't get along with, yeah, you have to listen to him. I know you don't like it. And who ends up really suffering the brunt of that is the employees, because exactly what you said happens is that the employee stops responding. They just kind of, I've seen it countless times. The employee gets mixed signals from the chief, assistant chief, from your boss, from whoever, supervisor. Eventually, they just throw up their hands. Fine, whatever. I'm done. I don't care.
And that's
Yeah.
the point I'm at right now. And I've told my partner,
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm like, I will help you, but if they ask me to do something, I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. They're on their own. Like, I'm the only one that can do certain things at our station. One of my partners, she
Yeah.
don't like heights. So when our cameras go out,
What a
they
nice
call
guy.
me. Yeah, because they know I know how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, because no one else there does.
Well, and the thing is that it's great that you use that ability, but if you abuse it, or if you then you end up where you're at. And we've touched on this before. Again, we're going to end up having to do some of our like re-recordings, or and updates on some of our older episodes that the sound quality is not as good. But we've touched on this, where what makes a good employee go bad, or at bare minimum apathetic, stuff like this.
100%.
It's amazing how fast in these family atmosphere departments and companies that I see employees who are on the fringes. You basically end up with tons of black sheep who, there's one or two. I remember when I worked in private ambulance, there was a couple ALS trucks in our station one that they were always happy. Oh, I love being here. I love, always happy. Everyone else is miserable, and like, oh, I just don't understand why you guys are all miserable. And people told them constantly, because you just complain and moan and groan till you get what you want. The rest of us then bear the brunt of you guys not doing anything. Oh, you guys are like over exaggerating and whatnot. And people hated that. Like we went through a period of turnover where I don't think I had the same partner more than 2 weeks in a row for a while, because we were turning people over so fast. But yet again,
and that's what we've been doing. Our turnover rate past 6 months has been ridiculously high. I'm like, like we talked about before, retaining and retention, we're not doing anything to retain our employees. Like we've had at least 6 people quit here past month because of extensive holdovers. Like I found out one person got held over 5 hours,
and which is
they said this is going to hold me over like crazy. Like I'm not doing this. They're like, oh, you have to. The consequences. You deny this trip, you can be terminated. Like that's not fair. I would have, if that had been me, because this is the person I am. I'd be calling that supervisor that's on call. Hey, I'm just letting you know I'm finally leaving work after being held over 5 hours. That's me. And then next shift, I'm going to be suspended because of that. But then I'm also going to march my happy ass up to headquarters and not walk in the owner's door. I'm like, we need to speak now.
Well, and the thing is that you're kind of touching into like the symptoms of like, how do you know that your leadership is failing you? Which, and this is kind of getting to where we're going to go next week, tentatively. I say tentatively because maybe we'll find something else. But when you get to the point where you're that frustrated and that angry, that is indicative of a major, major problem. When you get to the point, like one of my favorite podcasts I've listened to is Barbell Shrugged. It's Olympic and powerlifting, weightlifting, that kind of stuff. And one of them, I think it was Dr. Andy Galpin, that they had on for one of their shows, and they were talking about muscle mass, and does muscle mass and equal like cardiovascular ability. And the long and short of it is yes, because what causes people to get out of shape and actually causes more heart issues, like heart attacks than anything else, is the fact that if you were atrophied so much that walking from your front door to your mailbox and back gives you chest pain, because your heart is working so hard to try to feed muscles in your legs that cannot do it. Like that's a discernible problem. That's not an ignorable problem.
Yeah.
When you have employees who are angry and frustrated, when you have a turnover rate that is so high that you are literally rehiring in an agency to say, I'm going to go on a limb here. I've never actually asked you this, but what you guys probably have a total of 30, 40 employees
Just at our
Just at your station, 30 or 40?
Yeah, I mean, we probably have
150.
150 total.
Okay. So you got 6 per month they're coming in. On average. So if that
Right.
continues, it doesn't sound like much at first, but 6 times 12, 72 employees. If that trend continues, you are at half of your company's
Yep.
capacity turned over inside of a year. That's a problem.
Exactly.
Even if that only continues for 6 months,
Mhm.
outside of all of a sudden a lot of people decide, hey, I'm retiring. That's a problem. Like that's not a feature that like, oh yeah, you get lots of experience and you can move up the ladder quickly, although that's how we normally get it spun to us. No, that's indicative of a problem.
Exactly. Just out of my station alone, 3 people's leaving.
Which again, a station of 40 people, that's a little bit less than 10%. That's about 8%, but that's 8% of your workforce is leaving. That's 8% that you have to retrain, 8% that you have to reorient, 8% that you might get lucky and get guy who's been doing this for 15 years and plug and play, or you're gonna get Billy Bob from down at the local EMT school who still is trying to put this the blood pressure cuff around his head as a headband, and you basically have to, with kit gloves, guide them through everything. It's like, and then you wonder, like, was this worth it? Like, was it worth it losing this bad apple, this bad attitude person? And don't get me wrong, those bad people exist. They really do. But was it worth losing them and their experience to take on that of like 5 other people?
And that's how it is at our station. Like past say 3 months, we've trained 3 brand new ink still wet on their card EMTs. One of them already done. Well, take it back, 4 actually. One's already done quit about a month and a half ago. Already, one she's still in high school, so she's still shapeable. She's gonna be fine. Got a new one coming up, just graduated high school, and they always you always got to get your start somewhere. We were all in that same position at one point, but when they give you 2 or 3 days of ride time, that is not enough. I'm like, this is a shit ton of information thrown at you in 24, 36 hours. That's not enough information. That's not enough time to.
Well, and maybe 10 years ago, let's be clear, 10 years ago, it was not enough time. Let's just be honest. 10 years ago it was, 15 years ago it was. But maybe 10 years ago it was a little different because, we're in the heyday of.
We're still doing paper reports.
Well, yes, but what I was going to say is like we're in the heyday of like there's a paramedic in every single corner who's looking for a job, an experienced paramedic. Now that's not the case. There's not even experienced EMTs.
Like finding a needle in a haystack.
Not even experienced EMTs who are necessarily looking for jobs. And so now what you've done is you've taken that and you still have the same model of you're generally plug and play. You work for the local city fire department. We can just plug you into doing private ambulance and you'll do fine. And we're trying to do that with people who have no background to any work, let alone fire or EMS. And it's causing rubs because people are getting frustrated because the bosses are telling you, oh, no, they're getting it. Oh, I know they're getting it. You're trying to explain, no, they're not. It's that this is a problem. No, I can't get them to calm down while driving an ambulance. I can't ask them to turn on the lights and sirens because they just go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, and that's our problem. It's like when my supervisors say, hey, they need more time than their allowed time. They're like, well, that's too bad. They've had enough. I'm like, that's dangerous. Like they're not understanding. They don't understand what this is, what that is. They're not grasping it. They're like, oh well. I'm like, that's not the attitude to have. Either give them to another FTO or let them continue with us. So, because I'm the one that's like, after your 3 days, if you have to have more time with us, I'm gonna push really hard. I'm like, you're on your own. I'm gonna sit back. I'm not gonna let anything happen to you or the patient. I'm just gonna watch. If you have questions, please ask. but you're on your own.
But you can't always do that. And even when you can, sometimes you just have to be willing to say, hey, they do need more time. And I realize that there's a fine line here, as there is with everything else. So like, you don't want to end up 2 years into an employee who really can't fly by themselves and really can't do the job. You don't want that. But at the same time, too, I would say after probably a solid month, maybe two, you should have a general idea by then. Where are we going to end up here? Are we going to end up terminating in 6 months to a year, or is this going to be somebody who's going to be good for after a month? Like, and that's enough to see like progress. But no, we're trying to take that month and say, well, we'll see it in 3 days, and then 12 months later, 15 months later, somebody comes and says, hey, this guy still doesn't know how to write a wheelchair by cot report. Hey, this guy still doesn't know what ambulance transport form is. They've been with us for a long time. They have no idea.
Exactly. And like, I'm like you when it comes to training. We're going to hit everything. We're going to hit it hard, but we're going to hit it methodically. So like those ambulance transport forms, there's some hospitals that just put unable to ambulate. Like, this is where you say very polite, hey, we can't accept this. It's not a medical necessity on why. We have to have medical reasons. A lot of these nurses get really, really mad about it. And they're like, what do you mean? We always do that. I'm like, well, the ones that are taking them are not doing their jobs. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, we have to have a medical diagnosis, medical reasons why they have to go by an ambulance. Because if not, then they can go by a wheelchair or they can go by a private vehicle.
Did I ever tell you the response? And this will be 0% surprise to you whatsoever. Again, this is when I've only been an EMT for maybe 2 years, maybe 3 at most. Like, I was right before I started paramedic school. But what I said to this nurse, we're going out one of the old folks' home. So she comes, gives us the PCS and says, here you go. This is it. It's got generalized weakness. And I looked at her and said, hey, that's not a medical reason. It's like, well, what do you mean? And mind you, this is a nurse. She's in her 50s. I'm in my mid 20s. I'm like 20, maybe 26 at the time. At the oldest, I'm 26. And she's probably in her mid 50s ish. Maybe I'd say late 40s, but somewhere between like 48 and 56 years old, somewhere in there. You know, clearly been doing this for way too long now. And she looks at me, it's like, well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never had that to happen. That's never been an issue for me. And I looked straight at her and I said, just because you've been doing it wrong for the past 15 years doesn't mean that it's right. It means you've been doing it wrong for the past 15 years. I said,
that's something I'd say too.
Oh man, some of the nonsense I've said to people whenever they push that button.
Yeah, I mean, I had a nurse a couple months ago tell me, well, you guys are cutting into my lunch break. I said, well, if this was done appropriately, you could have been on your lunch break. Still, we wouldn't be standing here having this discussion. And I'm sorry, you have to take your lunch at a later time because I'm not taking this. I'm not taking the patient until this is corrected.
I don't feel bad about it. I still laugh, but
that is awesome.
And this was me when this is almost 10 years ago, me. So now, I mean, you really know I get ornery if you want to push that button.
Oh yeah. I'm the same way. 10 years ago, I probably would never have said that anymore. That's something I would have said.
We're pushing adenosine. We'll be there in 5. Didn't you understand? Well, you know we're in diversion. Yeah. What part of it? If I pushed adenosine, we'll be there in 5. Didn't you understand? I didn't question. There was no negotiation there. We're coming to you. Deal with it.
Yep.
But it's interesting when you look at that, and it's like, how did you like what do you do with that? It's like that's your alarm bell. That is your check engine light when you have employees leaving, when employees are generally disgruntled, when they don't want to come into work or they're coming into work late all the time. Although, Kevin, you don't get thrown into this because doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry, bro. I really am, but show up to work on time. I'm sorry. Just show up on time. But in general, if you've had an employee who has typically been 10 to 15 minutes early and now is walking in right at their start
Mhm.
time, that's an issue.
Yeah, that's a change that they should see at your clock and like, hey, we've noticed this has been changing. You used to be this early all the time. Now you're not. Is there something going on? Are you okay? Is there a
Mhm.
problem? You know, they're not trying to reach out to figure out
No.
the issue.
Yeah.
They just let it go. They brush it
Or
under
if
the
you
rug.
get an employee, and again, yes, there are employees who will call and complain about everything. But if you're getting an employee who is calling the supervisor a lot, like daily, they're calling with an issue over something, it at least merits a second look by someone saying, "What's going on here?" Because maybe it is like there's a real issue. Cool. But even if there's not, there's an issue that needs to be addressed there somewhere, whether it's an issue of understanding what their job spec is and their role, whether it's the issue of, hey, do you just feel like no, you're just kind of being used and you're not getting a break, which then leads you to a deeper rabbit hole of what's all the other vehicles doing? What are all the other crews you have doing versus
That happens all the time. Like crews get ran like sled dogs, and they see these other crews that they're posting like you're posting here, but yet we're running all the trips out of this place. What's going on? And then when you call to question that, you get criticized for questioning the dispatchers and doing their job. I'm like, well, then why am I the only one doing these trips? They said they've been sitting here for the past 4 hours. They could have done a trip or two by now. Like, and they get, well, don't question the dispatchers on their job. Well, no, I'm going to, because if there's a crew sitting here past 4 hours and I'm doing all the calls, there's a
I
problem.
don't know about how your company worked. So when I worked, you could easily tell whether it's medic or basic crew because even numbered crews based on their station was a medic crew. So we were out of station 1. So it was 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 were the allocated medic numbers, and then 1 up was the basic. So it'll be 10 and 13 or 10 and 11, 12 and 13, 14, 15, 16, so on and so forth. So if you knew you had an odd number, you knew it was a basic crew off the rip. And they didn't use ALS for advances. So if it was an advance, it was a basic crew. And when it was treated like a basic crew, there was no like, oh, you're gonna do half your you're an advance, you're gonna be an EMT basic. It's really difficult to justify whenever, as you said, they're posting. And it's 2 ALS trucks. Let's make it easy across the board. There's 2 ALS trucks. Yeah. But one truck is posting while the other one is clear trip, next one, clear trip, next one, clear trip. Yep. And then finally, after 6 or 7 hours, hey, medic 12, you guys can go ahead and return to quarters. And it's like, what were they doing out there? What were they doing what were we doing they couldn't? And then
exactly,
it's just so hard to to justify that.
Yeah, it is. Like that's a good example because we actually had an issue like that a couple weeks ago, last week at one of our hospitals. Crews posted there at the hospital. There's 2 calls coming out of that hospital, both of them BLS. It's an advanced truck. But yeah, dispatch wouldn't give that to them because it's a BLS. He's like, well, we're also a BLS provider too. Just because it says we're ALS, I'm also BLS. And they're like, nope, we're not using. So they sent 1 crew from Youngstown, 1 from Menor to go hour and a half away for a trip that was going.
Well, and if those crews get a chance from Mentor and Youngstown, if they get a chance to talk to the other crew, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're just sitting here. What?
Yep. And that happens
we used
to
do that all the time.
Yep. I do it all the time.
Wait, you guys are just sitting here? Yeah. Well, why aren't you taking this call? I don't know. We heard you guys coming from Canton, and we're wondering, why are you coming all the way up to Akron?
Oh, yeah.
All the way up to Worcester for this.
Yeah, they'll send a crew all the way up from Brecksville all the way up to Worcester, and we're sitting right there. And it's going to the local nursing. I'm like,
oh, yeah.
What?
I remember when I worked there, we would get sent down to what's it called? Not Brewster. It starts with a B. Not Baller. It's a small Bowerton.
Okay.
And we get sent down there because for whatever Bowerston Point, we had like for whatever reason we had a contract with them. I mean, that's down like Dover, New Philly area. So it was like a 45-minute drive to an hour drive one way to then do a 5-minute transport from the nursing home from Bowerston Point to a house. We didn't even come back up to where our station was. It was down there, and it's like, okay, cool. You guys can come back up into the Canton area, and we got another call for you. And I get somebody has to do it. But at what point did you say the fuel mileage was worth this basic transport to come down here, literally take them 3 blocks down the street to then turn around, drive an hour and a half back,
Yeah.
and then take another trip that you've probably been holding on to for 3 hours, waiting for us to make this whole loop.
Exactly. I see it at my place too. And I'm like, what? I try to stop asking questions because I don't care anymore. And that's the problem. When your employees stop caring, there's an issue there. It's like, what are you guys
that's
doing?
The biggest issue. And that's honestly the issue. And this maybe, so we're at hour 20. So at some point we're going to need to wrap this up here. This is where I would put that, is that when your employees say, I quit, I don't care anymore, you should not be saying, oh, how we get to care, no, you should legitimately say, what's going on? And
exactly. Like our owner, he has multiple times say, hey, I'm going to open up my office for discussions. Here's my calendar, the days I'm available, the times I'm available. Don't just come with complaints and gripes, come with solutions as well. But here's the problem, which, yes, I 100% agree with that. When he's getting told the same things over and over again, and how they should probably start fixing it, he shut it down because he got tired of hearing all the same issues. I'm like, that's a major problem. You don't want to hear it no more because it's the same thing. You're hearing it multiple times. You're not listening to us. You got to listen to what they have to say, but also, like, I agree. Try to come up with a solution instead of just complaints.
Well, at that point, when you're no longer willing to listen, it's no longer a team environment. It is the whoever the boss's show, and the only way that system will continue to tick. I won't say work, continue to tick, is if you have people who basically worship that person in their greatness and mightiness and whatever. But that system will not thrive. No. This is why, and I've been around long enough to watch this happen. This is why private ambulance companies get bought and sold and kicked out so much. This is why one person in our area owns so many of them. They're all still under their own names and whatnot, I get, but they all fall under one person. And it's because every single one of them, and say what you will about Ken Joseph, you could say whatever you want. He is a good businessman. I don't care what you say, because no one person.
He owns what, 6 different companies
across like 6 or 7 different counties. So he's clearly a good businessman. Is he always honest and always? No, but he's clearly a good businessman. Say what you will about him, and I look at the other ones and I say, your board of directors, who were supposed to be business directors, couldn't manage this, but he's managing all these Donald Trump style. Like,
yeah, you know, my biggest red flag for my company is when our vice president left. That was 2-3 years ago. That was the downfall.
I mean, in all honesty, though, that's usually like when you look at any company, and it's like I love listening to the video essays on old 90s tech, and the one on AOL is fascinating. America Online is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, you young ones out there don't know what it is. Look it up.
You were basically strangling a modem to get on the internet. It's hilarious, but no. So you're looking at at this company, and so AOL overtook Quantum Leap or Quantum Link, I think, in sometime in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. It was Apple's product line, and the reason why they took over was because one of the company executives literally forced out the CEO because they wanted because they wanted to drive their own company. And that was enough for the board of directors to say, stop, hold on, wait a minute. Something's wrong here. And AOL was born. They kicked out those board of directors because they immediately saw this is a hard rights like decision that you guys made, possibly politically motivated. And instead of saying, oh, well, maybe it's like, no, they said, nope, that's a problem. We're going to fix it. And American Online was born. Problem is, about 25 years later, with was a Time Warner merger, it was they did the exact same thing, which is why you don't hear of AOL so much anymore, because not only was a merger with Time Warner, but also because they did one of those things where all of a sudden the staff just the CEO staff just up and leaves out of nowhere, just quits. And it's like, that's, as you said, that's a red flag. When that happens, the collapse of that company is not far behind.
Yeah. I mean, our vice president left, our director of operations left, and they've been with that company from like I can't say from the beginning because they've been around since the late 50s, but for a very long time
and when they
leave.
Why? Something precipitated that.
No, I will say our vice president, he took a job with a major hospital up in Cleveland, but this place was like his baby.
When somebody who loves the place so much and then all of a sudden just says, hey, I'm leaving, I got a job somewhere else.
Yeah.
I know it's, and I know it's because when my battalion captain did that, he went down to Southern Ohio, Mid Ohio, somewhere.
Yeah.
He actually debated not taking $110,000 a year to stay at making roughly over 70 for that. So it's like, it's like, okay, this is bad. So like when you see somebody who just up and leaves, that person was looking further out and they found it. And that is a red flag.
Yep. And that was pretty much the slow downhill fall we've been having. And it's get up the hill a little bit, but we're coming right back down. And it's a vicious cycle. It's a toxic relationship.
It really is. And that's the thing, because usually the people that you put in to fill them are just that, fillers. They're not there to necessarily, you might get lucky and find somebody who's like, no, I actually really want to manage this and I really want to do a good job. You might get lucky, but most of the time they are fillers who are just looking for something until they can find the next thing that they're doing. They fill in for 5 or 6 years, maybe a decade, but they never really commit to it. They never really take the risk that they should.
Yep. I mean, when vice president, and he was with that company, I think 25 years, gone. Oh, wow. Shook. A lot of us that's been there for a long time, that's known him very well. He's like the glue of the company, and the glue's gone, and it's
well, and it's funny because the second red flag to that I would almost say is the bigger one, almost, is when they don't fill the position or they don't hurry to fill the position.
And in my opinion, I think they filled the positions with unqualified people, especially when someone that has less than 10 years experience, 2 years as a paramedic. Is he really that qualified to fill that position? No. He was only on the field maybe a year and a half. And then let's say 2.5 years, but I'm like, that one manager that's been there, he's been a manager for like 15 years. He kind of knows what he's doing. I actually like him. But the other two, they just don't care.
Well, and that's usually what happens. But then here's the thing, and this, we went through this whenever our chief left for a while and then came back, and in the replacement, they put out the guidelines for what they wanted, and basically what they wanted was an FDNY career captain, battalion captain, or division chief experience level with a master's degree in fire sciences, a PhD in emergency medicine, and also had EMA experience.
Might as well add a PhD in quantum
exactly
mechanics.
And they were going to pay roughly $80,000 a year for it. No,
Nobody gonna
and they
apply.
could not understand why, and they delayed this. And again, it shows a lot, but they're like, the powers that be delayed hiring and doing interviews. Why? Because you're getting captains from part-time departments and volunteer departments that had no other place but like, hey, that's an easy gig for me to get in on, and I'll take it for the 8,000 because it's a hell of a lot better than what I'm making now. And they couldn't understand.
Yep.
It's like, they're just not what we want. It's like, yeah, because your salary and your expectation are total worlds apart. And the same thing with you guys is that it actually shows what are they expecting from that vice president versus what were they willing to actually pay for it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's hard because as we said in previous episodes, this whole family and teamwork thing, and we don't want to give the impression that we're against working together as a team. We don't want
this job is based on teamwork.
Yes, but whenever you are using that as your crutch to like convincing people to stay or to apply or to be a part of your organization, that's where I get concerned because there's something else there that you're not valuing. And often I'm finding more times than not, whenever the very first thing that somebody has to tell you in their little pep speech, pep talk, this is a team environment and we are like a family. Watch out, because that tells me that they're not focused on the team. They're focused on what can the team do for you. It says John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And that is exactly what's happening here.
Yep. That was one of his most famous lines right there.
So, well, this is turning out to be quite the adventure we're going on. Really again, has. I'm waiting for we got 8, I think it was 8 viewers for this last one. Go away. 8 viewers for this last episode we did. Episode, I think it was 14. I had to actually go through and renumber them because I didn't bother to look and see where we're at. So but we're starting to go places, but I'm realizing though that this is a very triggering subject and would be very triggering to a lot of people because so many of us fall into this. And so many people, so many of us, this is how we got promoted. Let's be honest. And this is something else, it's like, this would be my last point, at least for this, is that this is what I told my father-in-law last night. I was on the phone with him telling him about this new position I'm going. And he's prior service, Air Force, but said that I saw it when I was still attached to my old quartermaster company. The soldiers, the 3 or 4 soldiers who would hang out in the platoon sergeant's office doing nothing but just kind of rubbing shoulders to be seen, so they go to their schools or they go to their leadership and whatnot, get promoted. And it's that kind of mentality that we need to get away from because it's killing us.
It is,
but I know that's how a lot of people got promoted. That's how a lot of people got positions. They just found the right person who they need to talk to. Again, it's not who you know, it's who you who and I get it. That's why this is going to be triggering to a lot of people. That's why this whole series is going to be triggering to a lot of people. Yeah, because a lot of us.
I mean, you can tell by me, it gets me fired up. Because I'm tired of seeing it.
And some people's going to get fired up because that's them. That's how they got their position, and they're like, "How dare you? How dare you say such?" No, is what it is. Maybe it's like I'm just going to throw us out here. You probably shouldn't be a fire officer with less than 5 years on the job. Just saying. I mean, and I know that there's some exceptions to this. There's always an exception. Somebody is going to at some point put a comment. It's like, oh, well, what about, an elephant stampede mowed down our entire fire hall while everyone was in there and only the chief survived. And we only had, 8 guys who were just out of fire school and they were all in their 19 and 20 years old. Like, wait, it's like, okay, yes. And in that scenario, yes, okay. But in the normal day-to-day operations, the guy with 5 years versus the guy with 15, the guy who's worked for a major city versus the guy who's only ever done volunteer. The gal who's only ever worked for a private ambulance company versus the one who's been a flight medic for the last 8 years. I'm not saying that those things necessarily make you perfectly qualified, but they do speak for something.
They do. They absolutely do.
So,
like you said, it's definitely triggering.
Yes. I actually debated on this, putting an explicit content warning, because it is that kind of thing. But though, these are conversations, and this is what I was telling my partner last night, is that these are conversations that should have been had with us 10 years ago. And
agree.
When we were 2-3 years in, somebody should pull us aside and, not explicitly laid out the entire thing and put out the entire dirty laundry, but at least in half a way said, hey, this is why we're doing this, and we're trying to be better ourselves. But we didn't. And now we're doing it, and now it's hurtful because it just is. So, oh boy. Do we have any final thoughts here? We're at hour 35 now, so
not right now.
So, yeah, so we'll be back next week or next within a few days here. Possibly closing this out, but as I said, it's the rabbit hole goes deep on this one.
It does. It goes very.
At some point, we're gonna have to commit to closing the series out and moving on with life. But for right now, continue the conversation. We'd honestly love to hear, and as we said, we know this is going to be a triggering subject, but we'd love to hear either, with respect to whoever it is you work for, but hey, have you had an experience where you've seen this kind of leadership that says, oh, we're all team, we're all family here, but has done the exact opposite, or refute us. Hey, I think you guys you've missed the mark, and maybe you've just had some really bad experiences. Hey, we can take that too.
Absolutely. We'll take the constructive.
It's like I haven't found the Holy Grail yet, but maybe if you have, hey, share it with us. Yeah. But just kind of. But as you think on that though, ask yourself, especially if you're in these positions, like, is this if this is triggering you? Is it triggering you because you're in the spot where you're seeing it and you just didn't know what to do with it? Or are you the problem? Are you the one who's doing it? So, again, thank you to JT for being our first commenter and whatnot. Well, we'd love to hear from you more. And I was looking through your thing, and it said you kind of want to do podcasting or do it. It's like, hey, dude, do it. It feels a little weird at first, but you get used to it. But hopefully we'll see more JTs out there and more people. And Zach, wherever you are, Chew Toy. I hope that you, as you're leaving the SO's office there and you're going on to greater and better things, I hope you're still able to listen to our podcast while working, because I know that's helped get you through a lot of things.
It sure, I know it does.
A little shout out just for you, boo. So, anyways, that I've been Tim, and this has been Conflict of Leadership Coffee Table Edition. We'll be back next time. We'll say next time, talking about what do we do with this and how do we actually navigate this. Yeah, because we can talk all day long about the nasty stuff, but at some point we need to bring this back around. So, until next time, I hate to say it like this, but it's just easy. Like, subscribe. Jeremiah saluted you, and we'll see you next time.